There's an obvious war on young men happening right now, and the objective of this war is to keep men and women divided so that we don't join together to create family units, because if there's one thing that the elites hate, it is a strong family unit. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't see this problem getting better until women, myself included, take responsibility for the hand that we've had.
Imagine this for a second. What if everything you've been told about relationships, about society, about what women supposedly want, and what men are supposedly obligated to provide, what if all of it was one giant, decades-long bluff? And what if millions of men all over the world quietly called that bluff at the exact same moment, stood up, brushed the dirt off their hands, turned around, and walked away forever? That is not a hypothetical anymore. That is happening right now, today, in real time. And the fallout is so seismic that women are starting to panic in ways most people have never seen before. If you want to know exactly how far this has already gone, how irreversible it has become, and what the final picture is going to look like when the dust finally settles, then do not move, do not click away, because by the time this video is over, you are going to see the future with crystal clear vision, and you are never going to look at the dating market or society the same way again. Now, before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If you want more no filter, zero apology, angry guy content the second it drops, smash that like button right now. Share this video with every man you know who needs to hear it. Subscribe, and most importantly, click the bell and select all so YouTube actually shows you when I post. We are building something massive here, and I do not want you to miss a single second of it. Also, if you are serious about protecting everything you are working for in this collapsing environment, go check out Angry's Crypto Academy right now. The link is in the description. That is where I teach you step by step how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, safeguard your assets so nobody, and I mean nobody, can ever take what is yours. Click that link and get enrolled today. And finally, if these videos are hitting home, if they are waking you up or just giving you that daily shot of clarity, consider buying me a Red Bull. There is a link in the description. Every can keeps the lights on and the content coming fast and hard. I appreciate every single one of you who throws a Red Bull in the cart. Now, let us get into it. Something absolutely earth-shattering is happening in slow motion, and almost nobody in the mainstream wants to talk about it out loud. Women are starting to figure out that men are happier, calmer, richer, healthier, and more at peace than they have ever been in modern history. And the moment men stop dealing with women altogether. Think about that for a second. After 50 plus years of being told to leave, to go away, to sit down, to shut up, to pay more, to give more, to apologize for existing, men finally listened. They left. And instead of collapsing into despair, like the narrative always claimed they would, men looked around, shrugged, and discovered something that flipped the entire script upside down. Life alone is not just bearable, it is actually better, a lot better. And once that realization spread like wildfire through the male population, everything changed forever. You see it everywhere now if you know where to look. Men are gaming for hours with zero guilt, building home gyms in their garages, joining invite-only clubs and private bars that do not even have public names, starting businesses with other men, traveling the world solo or in small packs, and generally living like kings on half the income they used to burn, trying to impress women who never actually cared in the first place. They are not angry anymore. At least not most of them. They are quiet. They are focused. They are stacking money, lifting heavier, sleeping better, and smiling more than they ever did when they were jumping through hoops for Instagram likes and first dates that never showed up on time. And women are noticing. Oh boy, are they noticing. The panic is setting in at terminal velocity. Social media is now flooded with women making videos asking the same question in 100 different ways. Where have all the good men gone? Translation: where are all the men who are still willing to pay for everything, tolerate everything, and never walk away, no matter how badly they are treated? Those men do not exist anymore, or at least not in the numbers required to keep the old system running. And the women who spent the last 2 decades celebrating the idea that they don't need no man are suddenly discovering that when enough men take that same energy and apply it in the opposite direction, the results are catastrophic for the people who are doing the celebrating. Look at the tactics that are starting to surface because they tell you everything you need to know about how desperate the situation has become. Some women are sliding into random men's DMs with nothing but hey or hi after years of preaching that unsolicited messages are harassment. Women are showing up at men's favorite coffee shops, hobby stores, even private car meets, trying to insert themselves into spaces they previously called toxic or male dominated. Women are writing long passive aggressive threads about how men who go to the gym alone are weird, or how men who cook for themselves instead of taking women to dinner are cheap. The mask is not just slipping, it has been ripped clean off and thrown in the trash. The same women who spent years telling men, we can do everything ourselves, are now furious that men believed them and acted accordingly. But here's the part that almost nobody is saying out loud yet. Men did not just walk away from women, they walked away from the entire deal that was offered to them. The deal that said, if you work 80 hours a week, stay in peak physical condition, become a never ending ATM, tolerate constant criticism, and hand over half or more of everything you own the moment she gets bored, then maybe, just maybe, she will let you stick around until she finds someone better. Men looked at that contract, laughed, tore it into a million pieces, and went to go live their best lives without a single signature on the dotted line. And the black pill truth that sealed the deal. Men finally accepted something that the red pill hinted at, but never quite drove all the way home. Most women do not actually like most men. They never did. They like what men can provide. They like the status, the money, the free dinners, the emotional tampon services, the heavy lifting, the protection, the validation. But the men themselves, the overwhelming majority of men have always been invisible at best and disposable at worst. Once men internalized that reality, once it moved from theory to lived experience, the decision to walk away was not hard. It was obvious. It was the easiest decision millions of men ever made. Now, here is where the story gets deliciously brutal. Men are not just walking away from dating, they are walking away from every single arena where they were told their presence was a problem. Remember, when certain activists said the gym was intimidating for women and that men staring or grunting was harassment, men left. They built private warehouses, home gyms, and powerlifting clubs that require referrals and signed NDAs to even find out the address. Result? The big corporate gym chains are bleeding members, and the private male only facilities are booked solid for the next 2 years. Remember when coffee shops and bookstores started putting up signs about safe spaces and hosting events where men were subtly or not so subtly told they were not welcome? Men stopped going. They started roasting their own beans at home, buying books direct from publishers or secondhand, and meeting in private lounges instead. Those trendy third wave coffee shops that used to be packed, half of them are quietly going out of business, while the price of home espresso machines has tripled from demand. The same pattern is playing out at work. Men are no longer playing the team player game where they stay late to help Karen finish her presentation or pick up the slack when Brittany calls in sick for the third Friday in a row. They do their job, they clock out at 5, they go home, they hit the gym, they enjoy their peace and quiet. Productivity in many corporate environments is mysteriously plummeting even as companies brag about how diverse they have become. Shocking. Even chivalry, the thing that was mocked and spit on for the last 20 years, is dead and buried. Men do not hold doors. They do not give up seats on trains. They do not walk on the traffic side of the sidewalk. They do not offer jackets when it is cold. And when women complain, men just keep walking. The social contract was broken a long time ago, and men are simply behaving as if no contract ever existed in the first place. And the best part, they are happier than they have ever been. You see, men are naturally minimalist. Give the average man a 600 square foot apartment, a gaming PC or a motorcycle, a gym membership, a grill, and enough money to cover steak and protein powder every month, and he is genuinely content. He does not need much. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Women, on the other hand, have been sold a fantasy that requires constant consumption, constant validation, and constant cash flow to maintain. Take away the army of men who used to subsidize that lifestyle, and the whole house of cards starts to wobble fast. This is why you are starting to see articles with headlines like The End of Men or Why Are Men Giving Up, written by women who sound legitimately terrified. They are watching in real time as the foundation they spent decades kicking out from under men suddenly disappears from under their own feet. And the men, they are on the beach sipping something cold, watching the sunset, and not looking back even once. Let us talk about the Titanic analogy for a minute because it is almost too perfect. For decades, women and the culture at large told men, "We do not need you, in fact. You are the problem. Now go sit in the corner and pay for everything anyway." Men finally said, "Okay," and started quietly climbing into the lifeboats. They did not make a scene, they did not argue, they just left. And now the ship is taking on water, the band is still playing, and the people who demanded women and children first a generation ago are suddenly screaming, "Wait, come back, we didn't mean it." But the lifeboats are already gone. The men are halfway to shore, and for the first time in their lives, they can hear themselves think. And here is the part that almost no one is ready for. This is not a phase. This is not a boycott that will end when women fix their attitudes. This is a permanent shift in the male population that is only going to accelerate. Every year, millions more men hit the age where they start paying attention to the world. And every year, those young men look at what their fathers and older brothers went through, look at the current state of the dating market, look at family court statistics, and quietly decide, nah, I'm good. The pipeline of men who are still willing to play the old game is drying up faster than anyone wants to admit. In 10 years, the idea of the eligible bachelor who is eager to wife up the average 30-something single mother with a $70,000 college degree and $150,000 in debt is going to sound like a fairy tale. The data is already undeniable. Surveys are now showing numbers as high as 87% of men under 30 have completely given up on dating, not because they cannot get dates, but because they do not want the hassle, the risk, or the expense. Marriage rates are in free fall. Birth rates in every developed country are crashing through the floor. And every single metric of male happiness, life satisfaction, financial savings, and physical health is going up directly in proportion to how little time men spend around modern women. Women are left holding a bag that turns out to be completely empty. And the sounds you are hearing online right now, the screaming, the shaming, the desperate attempts to guilt men back into the plantation, those are the death rattles. The game is over. Men won by refusing to play, and there is no strategy on earth that can force them to come back and pick up the pieces. I want you to really let this next part sink in because it is the core of everything we are watching unfold. Men do not hate women. Most of them do not even feel contempt. They feel nothing at all. That is the scariest part for the people who spent decades demanding male attention. The attention is gone, and it is not angry, it is not bitter, It is not even indifferent, it is simply absent. Men have moved on to better things, and the silence is deafening. So when you see another article blaming men for not stepping up, or another influencer crying about how there are no good men left, understand what you are actually looking at: the final stages of a civilization that told half its population they were obsolete, only to discover too late that the feeling was mutual. This is only the beginning, my friends. The walkaway movement is still in its infancy, and every day more men are waking up, looking around, and realizing they do not have to live like this anymore. The peace they are finding on the side is addictive. And once you taste it, there is no going back to the chaos. Stick around, because in part two, we are going deep into the numbers, the passport movement, the underground economy men are building, and the final collapse that is already baked in and unstoppable. You're not going to want to miss it. Now, let us pull the camera back even further and look at the macro picture, because what is happening is not just a dating market collapse, it is a full blown civilizational pivot that historians are going to be studying for the next 200 years. We are watching the moment when the post 1960 chess social experiment, the one that told men they could be replaced, demonized, taxed, regulated, shamed, and still be expected to show up with a smile and a wallet every single day, that experiment just ran into a brick wall at 900 miles per hour. And the wall is not moving. The wall is millions of men who finally looked at the deal, looked at the risks, looked at the rewards, looked at the way their fathers were destroyed, their brothers were drained, their friends were taken to the cleaners, and they said, in perfect unison, hard pass. And the most fascinating part is how quiet it has been. There were no protests in the streets. There were no manifestos nailed to courthouse doors. Men did not form a political party or start a hashtag revolution. They simply stopped participating. One by one, then 10 by 10, then hundreds of thousands at a time, they ghosted the entire system. They stopped simping. They stopped chasing. They stopped financing lifestyles they were never invited to enjoy. They stopped arguing online. They stopped trying to fix women who never asked to be fixed. They turned off the noise, closed the apps, deleted the dating profiles, and went to go build something better for themselves. And because it was silent, because it was decentralized, because there was no leader to arrest and no headquarters to raid, nobody in power saw it coming until it was far too late. Like, think about how insane that is. The most powerful nonviolent revolution in human history is happening right now, and it is being carried out by men who are not even raising their voices. They are just living their lives. They are in their apartments at 2 a.m., grinding ranked in whatever game they love, earbuds in, gains going up, bank account going up, stress going down. They are in the garage at 6 a.m., adding another plate to the bar while the rest of the world is still asleep. They are on a plane to Thailand or Colombia or Poland with nothing but a carry on and a grin because they finally understood that the grass actually is greener when you're not being guilt tripped for walking on it. And every single day, another man looks at that reality, compares it to the alternative, and makes the same choice. And meanwhile, the panic on the other side is reaching levels that would be hilarious if they were not so pathetic. You have major newspapers running cover stories asking why men are checking out as if it is some giant mystery. You have think pieces written by women making six figures a year complaining that the plumber who came to fix her garbage disposal would not ask for her phone number. You have dating coaches who built entire empires telling women how to train men, now openly admitting on podcasts that their tactics do not work anymore because the men literally do not care enough to be trained. You have entire Reddit subs and TikTok ecosystems dedicated to shaming men back into the box, and the comments are just filled with guys laughing and posting their deadlift PRs. The shame does not land when the target has already left the building. Let us talk about the passport movement for a minute because it is the perfect example of what happens when men stop asking for permission. 5 years ago, if you told the average guy he should consider dating abroad, he would have laughed or called it mail order bride creepy. Today, entire industries have popped up overnight teaching men how to get second passports, how to open offshore accounts, how to structure their lives so they can spend 9 months a year in countries where the women still smile when a man walks into the room. And these are not just the top 5% Chads either. We are talking regular dudes, mechanics, nurses, software developers, electricians, men who make 50 to 80K a year back home and live like absolute kings the moment they step off the plane somewhere else. They are not going over there to exploit anyone. They are going where their effort, their presence, and their resources are actually appreciated instead of treated like a human rights violation. And do not think this is some tiny fringe thing. There are now Facebook groups with 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 members where men share flight deals, apartment recommendations, language learning hacks, and vetting strategies. There are conferences in places like Bangkok and Medellin where 1,000 men show up to learn how to build location independent income and date women who do not think masculinity is a hate crime. The speakers at these events are not selling Lambos and private jets anymore. They are teaching regular guys how to live amazing lives on 3 or 4 grand a month in a place where that money goes 5 times farther and the dating pool treats them like human beings. And every single one of those seats sells out in hours. Back home, the reaction has been predictable. The same voices that spent years calling Western men trash are now calling the men who leave losers who could not make it at home. The mental gymnastics are Olympic gold medal level. They will tell you in one breath that Western women are strong and independent and do not need men. And in the very next breath, they will call you a coward for going where you are wanted. They will say you are running away while simultaneously bragging that you were never good enough to stay. The cognitive dissonance is off the charts, but it does not matter because the men are already gone. Their seats on the plane are booked, their apartments are rented, and their dating apps in the new country are blowing up with matches who say yes when they ask them to dinner. And here's the part that keeps the women who stayed behind up at night. The men who leave are not coming back, ever. They are not taking a 6-month sabbatical to find themselves and then returning to the plantation with a renewed sense of duty. They are building new lives, new social circles, new businesses, and in many cases, new families with women who did not spend their 20s treating men like a disease. The Western woman's greatest fear is no longer that Chad will not commit. It is that the decent, hardworking, reliable guy she ignored at 25 is now waking up in a penthouse overlooking the ocean with a 23-year-old former yoga teacher who makes him breakfast and never calls him toxic. And there is nothing she can do about it except make another TikTok crying into her ring light. But it is not just the passport guys. Even the men who stay local are completely rearranging the board. Look at what is happening in the trades right now. Electricians, plumbers, welders, diesel mechanics, all the jobs that keep society actually running, they are overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly in demand, and overwhelmingly done playing nice. These guys are booking out months in advance, charging whatever they want, and quietly laughing when the single mom influencer with the broken furnace tries to flirt her way into a discount. They show up, they fix the problem, they take the money, they leave. No small talk, no phone number exchange, no maybe we can grab coffee sometime. The power dynamic flipped so hard and so fast that most women still have not processed what happened. Wait, and do not think corporate America is immune. Men in tech and finance are quiet quitting in record numbers, not because they are lazy, but because they realize that climbing the ladder just means a bigger target on their back and a higher chance of being the fall guy the next time HR needs a sacrificial lamb. So they do the minimum to keep the paycheck, invest the maximum into crypto and index funds, and spend the rest of their time getting jacked, traveling, and living lives that would make their 2015 selves weep with envy. Companies are now throwing signing bonuses and remote work packages at men who will not even answer the recruiter's first message. The leverage has flipped completely, and even the gym culture has become a case study in male adaptation. Women spent years complaining that men were hogging equipment or staring or making them uncomfortable. So men left the big commercial gyms and built private warehouses with 24-hour keycard access. You want a deadlift at 3 a.m. with blasting metal music and zero management telling you to keep it down? Done. Want a facility where nobody films TikToks in front of the squat rack? Done. Want to train with 20 other dudes who all make six figures and share notes on tax optimization while they spot each other? Done. Those warehouses are now the hottest real estate investments in every major city because the wait lists are years long and the members pay premium rates without blinking. The spaces men abandon, meanwhile, start rotting almost immediately. Look at what happened to places like Barnes and Noble once men stopped going. The cafes used to be packed with guys reading investing books and quietly working on their laptops. Now, those same cafes are half empty and the shelves are 60% YA romance novels and coloring books. Look at what happened to certain nightclub scenes once men stopped showing up to buy bottle service for women who would not give them the time of day. Those clubs either pivoted to gay nights or closed completely. Look at what is happening to dating apps. The male to female ratio is now so lopsided that the apps have to run massive discounts for men just to keep enough warm bodies in the system to prevent total collapse. And even with the discounts, men are still walking away in droves because they realized the juice is not worth the squeeze by about 10,000%. And this is the part people miss when they call it a boycott. A boycott implies that you want something and you are withholding participation until you get it. This is not a boycott. This is an exodus. This is millions of men realizing they never needed the thing they were chasing in the first place. They are not asking for better behavior. They are not asking for lower standards. They are not asking for anything. They are simply gone. And the silence they leave behind is the loudest sound modern women have ever heard. We are now entering the phase where the consequences are becoming impossible to hide. Birth rates in South Korea just hit 0.58. Japan is literally running out of children. Europe is importing replacement populations because their own men have checked out and their women waited too long. The United States is not far behind. Every single Western country is now facing a future where 30 to 40% of women in the 2035 to 2045 age bracket are going to be childless and alone, not by choice, but because the men they spent their youth rejecting finally took them at their word and built lives that do not include them. And there will be no government program, no social movement, no amount of shaming that can put that toothpaste back in the tube. The men, meanwhile, are going to be just fine. They are younger than their calendar age because they are not stressed out of their minds. They are richer than their income suggests because they are not bleeding money on dates, weddings, and divorces. They are healthier because they lift, they eat clean, and they sleep 8 hours a night without someone next to them stealing the covers and the peace. They have deeper friendships because they invest in their brothers instead of chasing women who never chose them back. And they have something that no amount of money can buy: options, real options. The option to stay single forever and be perfectly content. The option to date abroad. The option to build a family on their own terms. The option to walk away the moment anything feels off. That kind of freedom is intoxicating, and once a man tastes it, there is no force on earth that can drag him back to the cage. So when you hear the next talking head on television asking, "Where are all the good men?" understand that the good men are exactly where they want to be, far away from the people who spent decades telling them they were the problem. They are lifting, stacking, traveling, building, laughing, and living lives that make the old paradigm look like a prison sentence. And the best part, they are not angry anymore. They are at peace, real peace. The kind of peace you only get when you stop fighting a war that was rigged from the start and start building your own kingdom instead. Now, let us talk about the part that almost nobody is ready to hear, the part that keeps certain people awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Men are not just walking away from women, they are building an entirely new parallel society, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, deadlift by deadlift, and it is growing so fast that the old system cannot even measure it accurately anymore. This is not some fantasy about log cabins in the woods. This is happening in plain sight, in warehouses, in high rise condos, in co living spaces in Eastern Europe, in private Discord servers with 40,000 members, in crypto wallets that never touch a bank, in gyms that do not have addresses listed anywhere online. Men are creating infrastructure that does not need, does not want, and in many cases actively excludes the chaos that the mainstream dating and corporate world has become. And the speed at which this is scaling is terrifying to anyone whose entire life plan depended on the old rules staying in place forever. Think about what competence looks like when it is no longer diluted by the need to impress or provide for people who never valued it in the first place. That is what you are seeing right now. Men who used to waste hours a day arguing with strangers online or swiping on apps that hated them are now channeling that same energy into becoming legitimately dangerous in the best possible way. They are learning languages in 6 months. They are turning side hustles into seven-figure businesses. They are getting sub 10% body fat while pulling 600-pound deadlifts. They are stacking crypto portfolios that make their 401ks look like lunch money. They are building private networks where the only admission requirement is proof that you add value and never bring drama. And because all of this is happening outside the view of the mainstream radar, most people still think the average guy is sitting in his mom's basement playing video games and feeling sorry for himself. The reality is the exact opposite. The average man who walked away is now in the best shape of his life, making more money than he ever has, and surrounded by a brotherhood that actually has his back. The basement dweller stereotype is propaganda that died about 5 years ago, and nobody bothered to update the script. One of the biggest growth areas right now is what people are calling the underground male economy. These are businesses, services, communities, and revenue streams built exclusively by men for men with zero interest in being inclusive or advertiser friendly. Private barbershops that look like 1920s speakeasies and only take payment in cash or crypto only. Tailors who will fly to your city, measure you once, and ship custom suits that fit like a glove for half the price of anything off the rack. Private chefs who cook 4,000 calorie bodybuilding meals and deliver them in unmarked coolers so your coworkers do not ask questions. Cigar lounges hidden behind unmarked doors where the membership fee is 5 figures a year. And the only rule is no pictures, no women, no gossip. These places are exploding because men finally have disposable income again. Disposable income that used to disappear into dates, engagement rings, destination weddings, and divorce attorneys, and child support for kids they barely get to see. Now that money stays in the brotherhood, and it is compounding faster than anyone can track. Even the way men vacation has completely changed. The all-inclusive resort package where you blow $5,000 to sit on a beach while couples argue around you? Dead. Men are now doing private villa retreats in Bali with 10 of their closest brothers, private chefs, Muay Thai training twice a day, and mastermind sessions at night about tax strategy and real estate. They are renting entire islands in the Philippines for a week and flying in direct. They are doing overland motorcycle trips across Patagonia with nothing but a backpack and a satellite phone. And every single one of these trips ends with the same realization. Why the hell did I ever spend money trying to impress people who hated me when I can live like this with my real friends? The next phase that is already starting in pockets around the world is male only or male first communities, not cults, not compounds with barbed wire, just places where men decided to pool resources and build something better. There is a 200-acre ranch in Texas right now that was bought by a group of 28 guys who all met in a private fitness server. They put in equal money, built a compound with a 10,000 square foot gym, a fight pit, a gun range, guest houses, and a commercial kitchen. Membership is invitation only, and the wait list is over 400 deep with a $50,000 buy in. There is a co living building in Bucharest where 40 high earning remote workers live. All men, all under 35, all jacked, all running online businesses that clear multiple six figures. Rent is $600 a month, including a cleaner and a meal plan service. There's a neighborhood in Medellin where an entire city block has quietly become 90% single foreign men who bought properties cash and now control the local economy. These are not fantasies. These are real places you can visit tomorrow if someone vouches for you. And do not think this is only for the rich. The beauty of the walkaway movement is how scalable it is. The guy making 45 key a year as an electrician can move to Paraguay, buy a small house for 60 grand cash, and live better than most doctors do back home. The guy making 150K in California can sell everything, move to Dubai, pay zero income tax, and bank an extra 60K a year while dating models who still believe while in the kitchen. The guy making 400K in New York can buy a penthouse in Panama City for half the price and run his business from a balcony overlooking the ocean while his friends back home are still arguing about who is going to pay for the next round of IVF. Every income bracket now has a passport strategy that turns I'm stuck into I'm free in under 12 months if the man is willing to move. The provider role itself, the thing that defined masculinity for thousands of years, is dying faster than anyone predicted. Men are no longer willing to trade their entire lives for the privilege of being a walking wallet with legs. And once enough men opt out, the entire pricing structure of female attention collapses. Why would any man spend $300 on a first date when he can fly to Colombia round trip for the same price and have women fighting to cook him dinner? Why would any man spend six figures on a wedding when he can put that money into a duplex that cash flows $4,000 a month for the rest of his life? Why would any man sign a marriage contract that gives one person the legal right to take half his assets and restrict access to his own children when he can stay single, stay rich, and stay drama free forever? The math is no longer close. It is not even a conversation anymore. Women are starting to feel this in ways that statistics still have not caught up to. Rents in major cities are mysteriously going up even as salaries stagnate because there are no longer thousands of men willing to subsidize a woman's lifestyle so she can live in a neighborhood she could never afford on her own. Luxury retail is quietly hurting because the guys who used to drop 2 grand on a purse to get a second date are now buying gym equipment and steak instead. Even OnlyFans, the ultimate symbol of the attention economy, has flatlined and started bleeding creators because men realized they can get better content for free or pay a fraction overseas and actually meet the person in real life if they want. Every industry that relied on male thirst is either pivoting hard or preparing to die. And the government response? Panic disguised as policy. Countries are now floating ideas like bachelor taxes, mandatory fatherhood programs, and even financial penalties for men who earn above a certain amount and remain unmarried. They are talking about raising the retirement age again because there are not enough young workers paying into the system to support the aging population that spent decades telling men they were obsolete. They are importing third world migrants at record speed because Native women will not reproduce with the Native men who walked away. Every solution they propose only accelerates the exodus because it proves to the men still on the fence that staying means slavery and leaving means freedom. The most brutal part of all of this is how irreversible it has already become. There is no speech, no cultural campaign that can put this genie back in the bottle. You cannot shame a man who is happier alone than he ever was in a relationship. You cannot tax a man who has already moved his money offshore. You cannot draft a man who has already left the country. You cannot guilt a man who has already knows his value and no longer seeks validation from people who never chose him. The leverage is gone. The power has shifted permanently. And the men who understand this are not celebrating in the streets because they do not need to. They are too busy living lives that make the old reality look like a prison sentence. We are now entering the endgame, where the consequences compound so fast that entire societies will be unrecognizable in a decade. We are going to watch birth rates collapse to levels that make current projections look optimistic. We are going to watch industries that depended on male provider energy go bankrupt overnight. We are going to watch women in their late 30s and 40s flood dating apps with increasingly desperate bios, while the men their age are on another continent lifting weights with 24-year-olds who still believe respect is a two-way street. And we are going to watch the final death of the idea that men exist to serve systems that hate them. The walkaway movement is no longer a movement. It is the new default setting for masculinity, and it is only getting stronger. Now we are standing at the edge of the cliff, looking straight down into the abyss that almost nobody wants to admit is already open and waiting. The collapse of female hypergamy is no longer a theory, no longer a slow motion train wreck you can pretend is still 10 years away. It is here. It is happening in real time. And the sound it is making is the sound of millions of life plans, retirement strategies, and entire cultural narratives shattering against the rocks of reality. Because once men stop playing the provider game at scale, the one thing women were always counting on, the one thing the entire modern dating economy was built on top of, the endless upward spiral of better, taller, richer, hotter, that spiral does not just slow down. It goes into absolute free fall. Hypergamy does not work when the supply of men willing to participate drops by 70, 80, 90% overnight. Hypergamy only functions when there is an unlimited ladder of men ready to sacrifice everything to climb one rung higher for a woman who will never actually be satisfied. Take away the ladder, burn it, salt the earth where it stood, and the whole structure collapses. Women spent the last 30 years being told they could have it all: the career, the independence, the fun in their 20s, the high earning, loyal prince in their 30s who would happily raise another man's kids and never complain. And for a brief window, that was sort of true because there were still enough boomer raised, Disney program men who believed that was their duty. That generation of men is now either divorced and broke, dead, or finally woke up and walking away themselves. The replacement generation looked at what happened to their dads, looked at the current deal on the table, and said, "We would literally rather die alone than sign that contract." And they are not bluffing. You see the fallout in the most unexpected places. Dating apps are now flooded with women in their mid to late 30s who have suddenly dropped all their old requirements. 6 feet or taller, gone. 6 figures or better, gone. Must love dogs and brunch and Taylor Swift, gone. The bios now just say things like looking for something real, or tired of games, or just seeing what's out there. Translation: I am terrified, and I will settle for almost anyone who still has a job and does not hate me on sight. And even with those lowered standards, the swipe ratio is still 20 to 1, 30 to 1, 50 to 1 in favor of the few remaining men who have not deleted the app entirely. The apps themselves are now running television commercials begging men to come back, offering free boosts, free super likes, verified badges for everyone, anything to stop the bleeding. It is not working. The men are not coming back. They are in the gym. They are in Thailand. They are asleep by 10 p.m. with 9% body fat and a seven-figure net worth trajectory. They are not scrolling at 2 a.m. looking for someone to save. The phrase the wall used to be a joke in certain corners of the internet. It is not a joke anymore. It is a guillotine. And it is falling faster than any model ever predicted because the men who used to soften the landing simply are not there anymore. Women who planned to lock down a good one after the carousel years are now staring at an empty room where the good ones used to stand. The ones who are still single at 34, 35, 36 are not being picky anymore. They are being ignored, completely, ruthlessly, blissfully ignored by men who finally understand that time and youth in a woman are not renewable resources the way money and status in a man can be. And once that truth went mainstream inside the male population, the entire pricing structure of the sexual marketplace flipped upside down in about 18 months. At the same time, something even darker is brewing that nobody on the mainstream side wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. The coming male fertility crisis that is not about sperm counts, it is about willingness. Men are starting to ask a question that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Why would I ever have children in a system that can take them away from me on a whim, make me pay for them for 2 decades, and still call me a deadbeat if I miss one check? The answer a lot of them are landing on is I wouldn't. And they're not just talking about it, they're getting vasectomies in record numbers in their 20s. They are freezing sperm as insurance and then cutting the cord permanently. They are building lives that revolve around freedom, travel, gains, brotherhood, and legacy that does not depend on offspring who can be weaponized against them. If tell the birth rate collapse, everyone keeps blaming on economics, is only 30% economics. The other 70% is men looking at the deal and choosing not to play Russian roulette with their genetics. Governments are starting to notice. Some countries are already floating financial incentives for men to marry and reproduce. Tax breaks, housing priority, straight up cash payments. It is not working either. Men see the carrot and then they see the stick hiding behind it. Family court, false allegations, child support that lasts longer than the Roman Empire. Social shame if you do not comply. They look at the carrot, look at the stick, and they keep walking. The incentives would have to be in the high six figures per child, paid upfront in crypto with ironclad legal protection against any future claims before even the greediest man would consider it. And even then, most would still say no because peace is worth more than any amount of money. Meanwhile, the rise of artificial companionship is accelerating so fast it is almost impossible to overstate. Men who 10 years ago would have laughed at the idea of a sex doll or an AI girlfriend are now dropping five figures on hyper realistic companions that never argue, never age, never gain weight, never threaten to call the police over a text message. The technology is already good enough that large numbers of men are choosing it over the real thing. And in 5 years, it will be indistinguishable from reality to every human sense, except legal liability. Add in VR, add in AI that learns your exact preferences and sense of humor. Add in the fact that it costs less per year than 1 month of dating in a major city, and you start to understand why entire venture capital firms are quietly pouring billions into this space while the mainstream media pretends it is still a creepy fringe thing. It is not fringe. It is the escape hatch for an entire generation of men who looked at the alternative and chose the final red pill: replacement. And replacement is exactly what is coming, not just in companionship, but in every area women used to dominate through default. Men are hiring private chefs instead of wives. They are hiring cleaners instead of live in girlfriends. They are hiring surrogates and co parenting contracts in other countries if they do decide to have kids. They are building families that look nothing like the 1950s postcard because the 1950s deal was destroyed and nobody bothered to offer a new one that was not punitive. The nuclear family is not dying because men hate women. It is dying because the legal and cultural structure around it became a meat grinder pointed exclusively at men. And men finally gained the knowledge and mobility to step out of the way before the blades hit them. The final destination is already visible if you know where to look. In 20 years, there will be entire cities, entire regions, entire countries where the male to female ratio is so skewed that women will have to import men the way countries currently import oil. There will be ghost neighborhoods in the West where once expensive condos sit empty because no couple can afford them on one income and no man is willing to combine incomes anymore. There will be retirement homes filled with women who spent their youth being strong and independent, now wondering why none of their cats can drive them to doctor's appointments. There will be a permanent underclass of men who never walked away, the ones who stayed and got used up, living as cautionary tales, while the men who left live like kings on the beach with second families and third passports. And the men who walked away early, they will be the new aristocracy, not because they conquered anyone, not because they fought wars, but because they simply refused to participate in their own destruction. They will have the money, the health, the freedom, the brotherhood, and the peace that the old system promised but never delivered. They will be the ones writing books, building companies, exploring the world, mentoring the next wave of even younger men who never even knew there was another way to live. They will be the living proof that when men stop asking for permission and start building their own tables, the old table starves. Women will adapt eventually. Some already are. You're starting to see it in pockets. Who? Women in their early 20s who grew up watching their mothers and aunts end up alone and bitter. Women who are rejecting the boss babe script and learning how to cook, how to be pleasant, how to add value instead of just demanding it. But they are a tiny minority and they are swimming against a cultural current that spent decades telling them the opposite. The window for mass adaptation closed about 5 years ago. The rest will have to live with the consequences of the choices that were celebrated as empowerment when they were young and irreversible when they got older. The culture itself will split. One side will be the crumbling matriarchal West, aging fast, importing population, taxing the remaining men into the ground, wondering why nothing works anymore. The other side will be the new male first societies, places where men built something better, places with birth rates above replacement, places where masculinity is celebrated instead of medicated, places where a man can still be a man without apologizing every day for existing. The border between those two worlds will not be a line on a map. It will be a line in men's minds. And once a man crosses it, there is no going back. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is not even justice in the way most people understand the word. This is simply cause and effect playing out on a civilizational scale. You tell an entire generation of men they are toxic, worthless, unnecessary, and obsolete. And then you act shocked when they believe you and act accordingly. You cannot spend 50 years kicking a dog and then act surprised when the dog finally stops coming when you call. The dog is not broken, the dog is free. And the most liberating part of all of this, the part that makes every man who truly gets its sleep like a baby at night, is that there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. No law, no tax, no shaming campaign, no article, no tearful TikTok, no government program, no amount of propaganda can force men back into a burning building they already escaped. The fire is still raging, the walls are collapsing, and the men are on the beach drinking something cold, watching the sunset, and finally understanding what peace actually feels like. So if you are still on the fence, if you are still trying to make it work with a system that hates you, if you are still holding out hope that things will go back to normal, let this be your final wake up call. Normal is never coming back. The deal is dead. The contract was torn up and the pieces were burned. Your only job now is to get out of the blast radius and start building the life you were always told you had to earn through sacrifice. But that is actually yours the moment you decide to take it. The walkaway movement is not a phase, it is the future. And the future belongs to the men who were willing to walk. Because the story does not end when the men reach the beach. That is just intermission. The second act is already starting, and it is going to be the most fascinating, brutal, and liberating chapter in modern male history. The men who walked away first are no longer just surviving. They are colonizing, they are planting flags in new territories, new economies, new cultures, and new bloodlines. And the speed at which this is happening is turning the old world's panic into pure desperation. Let us start with the fertility war that nobody is allowed to talk about on mainstream platforms. Western birth rates are not declining, they are in vertical free fall. South Korea just posted a fertility rate of 0.58. That is not a typo. That means for every 100 women who should be having 210 kids to replace the population, they are having 58. In 10 years, there will be half as many Korean children as there are today. Japan is on the same trajectory. Italy, Spain, Germany, Canada, the UK, all of them are now below 1.3 and still falling. The United States is only being propped up by immigrant birth rates, and even those are crashing the moment the second generation hits American culture and dating apps. This is not an economic problem. This is not a cost of living problem. This is a male opt out problem. When 70 to 80% of men under 35 say they do not want children ever, under any circumstances, the species level math stops working. And no amount of government bribes, no amount of think of the economy guilt trips, no amount of propaganda changes the fact that men looked at the contract and burned it. But here's the part that keeps demographers up at night. The men who are still having children are increasingly doing it outside the West with non Western women under non Western legal systems. The passport brothers are not just dating abroad, they are marrying abroad, buying property abroad, and planting roots that will never be subject to Western family courts. In 10 years, there will be more American blooded children growing up in places like Colombia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Poland than in certain blue states. These kids will speak perfect English, carry American passports, and grow up in cultures that still respect fathers. And when they turn 18, a large percentage of them will look at the West the same way their fathers did and say, hard pass. The genetic and cultural exodus is already locked in. Meanwhile, back in the West, the fertility industry is becoming the biggest grift since crypto in 2017. Women who spent their prime years chasing careers and carousel riders are now dropping $80,000 to $150,000 per IVF cycle, trying to buy back the babies they were told they could have it all and get later. The clinics are booked solid for years. The success rate after age 38 is still under 10% per cycle, and the men who used to be expected to co sign that debt and raise the resulting child are nowhere to be found. Sperm banks are running out of high quality donors because the smart men figured out that donating sperm is just a lifetime child support trap with extra paperwork. The entire industry is one bad quarter away from total collapse, and when it goes, the screaming will be heard on Mars. The economic fallout is only starting to hit. Social Security, Medicare, pension systems, all of it was built on the assumption that there would always be 4 or 5 workers paying in for every retiree taking out. That ratio is now 2.8 dash to dash 1 and dropping like a rock. By 2040, it will be 1.8 dash to dash 1 in most Western countries. That is not sustainable. That is collapse math. And the only proposed solutions are A, tax the remaining men harder, B, import more immigrants who immediately stop reproducing once they arrive, or C, beg the men who left to come back and save the system they already escaped. Every single one of those options accelerates the collapse instead of slowing it. This is why you are starting to see articles with headlines like the end of retirement and why Generation Alpha will never own homes. They still will not say the real reason out loud, but the reason is simple. There are not enough men working, paying taxes, and staying in the system to keep the Ponzi scheme running. The men who walked away are either offshore, untaxed, and living on cash flow, or they are working just enough to stay under the radar while investing everything else into assets the government cannot easily seize. The tax base is evaporating in real time, and the people in charge are reduced to yelling at clouds. The housing market is the next domino. For decades, women could count on either marrying a man who would buy the house or co signing with a man who would pay most of the mortgage while she contributed the Pinterest board. That model is dead. Men are no longer buying the 3-bedroom suburban house with the white picket fence. They are buying 1-bedroom condos downtown or rural acreage with a pole barn, or nothing at all because they live in Thailand 6 months a year. The McMansion suburbs are already filling up with single women and single mothers who cannot afford the mortgage on one income and cannot sell because there are no buyers. Zillow's own internal data shows that in certain markets, 70% of new home purchases under $600K are now cash deals by single men or male investment groups. The starter home market that depended on young couples is evaporating. Prices will eventually crash in those segments, but not because of interest rates, but because there are no longer enough greater fools willing to go into debt slavery for a house they will lose in the next divorce. And universities are next. The gender ratio is already 60, 40 female in most Western countries and heading towards 70, 30. The degrees that women dominate, communication, psychology, gender studies, education, sociology, are becoming openly joked about as cat lady majors because the salary to debt ratio is catastrophic. Meanwhile, trades, engineering, computer science, and nursing are quietly becoming 80 to 90% male again because those are the only degrees that still pay. The student loan bubble is going to pop hardest on the majors that were sold to women as empowerment. When the debt comes due and the barista job does not cover it, the default rates will be biblical. The corporate world is already cracking. Companies that went all in on diversity hiring are now quietly laying off the exact demographics they bragged about hiring 5 years ago because the competence gap became too big to ignore. The men who remain are doing the bare minimum and jumping ship the moment a better remote offer appears. The phrase, act your wage, was invented for this exact moment. Productivity numbers are cooked, but anyone inside these companies knows the real score. The men who actually make the trains run on time are checked out, and the replacements cannot figure out why the servers keep going down on Fridays at 4:59 p.m. Even the military is feeling it. Recruitment is in the toilet across the West. The generation that was told their whole lives were disposable is now being asked to die for a country that calls them toxic for existing. The response has been a collective shrug. The U.S. Army missed recruiting goals by 25% last year and had to lower standards so far that they are now accepting recruits with felony records and ASVAB scores in the single digits. Other countries are quietly bringing back conscription and discovering that the men they want to draft have either left the country or suddenly developed anxiety disorders that make them medically unfit. Good luck fighting the next war with an army that hates the society it is supposed to defend. The political backlash is going to be glorious to watch. The old playbook of calling men incels or losers or basement dwellers stopped working the moment the men being insulted started posting shirtless beach photos from Bali with a 22-year-old on their arm and a bank balance that would make a senator blush. The new attack vector is calling them cowards or runaways or traitors to women. It still does not land because the men being attacked are too busy living better lives than the critics ever will. The next phase will be actual legal punishment, bachelor taxes, mandatory relationship readiness courses, restricted passports for single men, All of it is already being floated in academic papers and European parliaments. Every time they try it, another 100,000 men will disappear offshore and take their tax money with them. The splintering of society into two parallel civilizations is already underway. On one side, you have the legacy West, aging, broke, entitled, infertile, addicted to debt and dopamine, screaming at the sky. On the other side, you have the new male diaspora, younger, richer, healthier, networked, fertility rates above replacement, building compounds, buying land, creating media, writing new rules, and laughing at the idea that they owe the old world anything. The border between these two civilizations is not geographic yet, but it soon will be. There will be no-go zones in Western cities where traditional men simply do not appear anymore, and there will be safe haven cities in places like Dubai, Budapest, Asuncion, and Tbilisi, where a Western man can walk down the street and be treated like a human being instead of a criminal for saying hello. And the final red pill that almost no one is ready for, this is not going to end in compromise. There will be no grand bargain, no return to tradition, no men's rights movement that fixes the system from inside. The system is the problem, and the men who understand that have already left the system. The only thing left is the collapse of the old order and the rise of whatever comes next. Some countries will try full-on authoritarian feminism and collapse in 20 years. Some will try importing millions of military-age men from cultures that never heard of consent forms and discover that those men do not pay taxes either. A few will try actual incentives for family formation with real legal protections for men and might slow the bleeding for a generation. Most will just keep printing money and raising taxes until the whole thing comes down like a house of cards in a hurricane. The men who walked away will watch it all from the beach, or the ranch, or the penthouse, or the mountain compound, drinking something cold and strong, surrounded by brothers who actually have their back, and they will not feel a single ounce of guilt because they were told the truth when everyone else was lying. They saw the iceberg when everyone else was still dancing. They got in the lifeboats when everyone else was screaming that the ship was unsinkable. And when the water finally closes over the smokestacks, they will not turn the boats around. Not this time. This is the new masculinity, not the angry, bitter, screaming version that the media loves to caricature. The calm, quiet, competent, untouchable version that simply refuses to die for people who hate them. The version that builds instead of begs. The version that walks away and never looks back. And so if you are still reading this far, if you made it through 20,000 words of pure fire, then you already know what time it is. Your move. What did you think about the entire thing? Did this one break your brain or set you free? Are you already gone? Or are you packing your bags tonight? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear where you are on the journey. Like the video if it hits you in the soul, subscribe if you have not, share it with every man who is still asleep, and always remember, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how loud they scream, no matter how hard they try to drag you back, all roads lead to MWA, men walking away. Cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.